Thursday morning, you know what that means? Coast to coast every Thursday at 11. Back to our usual schedule after hitting a Tuesday. Gabe, we have a loaded slate again this week. I feel like that's going to be a common theme for us throughout the season because so far we have had loaded slates all week, but the Knicks are giving us our opening topic this week as they have begun to gel. They're looking good. They're getting some reinforcements back. You take it away. State of the Knicks a quarter through the year.
Knicks, right now, this was a big stretch, right? You go on to this 9-game stretch a couple games ago where you're facing a lot of weaker opponents. You needed to take advantage, and they've done exactly that. Especially last week, we were talking about games against the Utah Jazz and the Dallas Mavericks where this team looked completely lost. But then you go up against Washington, these weaker teams, big test in Orlando, able to win that game as well. The Knicks right now, they're looking like they're completely in form. This is the Knicks team we imagined them to be. Even in that Orlando game, only giving up a little over 100 points, so really good defense as well in that game. Kevin, you have to ask yourself with this team, you had Charles Barkley's claims of maybe this team's the second best team in the East. You have a scary team, and as you mentioned, this team's not even fully healthy yet.
Yeah, you look at the standings in the East, right? I don't totally disagree with Barkley's claim, but we still have to see the Cavs fall back down to earth before we could really make that. But yeah, the Knicks look great. The stretch of games, they have the easiest next 14 games in the NBA, but you made a video about it a few weeks ago that I think was on Playbook that, their stretch coming up from starting from 2 weeks ago, and I think it included that Utah game that they lost, but starting then, their schedule is the easiest it'll be all year. And this is where they really need to stack those wins and actually crack the top 3 in the East because right now they are a game and a half behind Orlando. Beating Orlando was huge. That did feel like the test, right? In this mix of games where you're saying, all right, they're beating these easy teams. They're winning games they should. Let's see how they do against Orlando at the Garden. You have the NBA Cup aura to the game. We'll talk about the NBA Cup later. But the Knicks absolutely handled them. And I'd be honest with you about the Magic. A lot of people are saying, well, no Banchero. They looked great without Banchero. So I don't think that is. Wagner looks way better with him off the floor, and Wagner's been playing great. Not that they're not a better team with Paolo on the court, but, man, Magic are good, and for the Knicks to handle them that way was very convincing.
Yeah, you have to look at that game and tell yourself, even with Banchero not being out or being in, with Goga Bitadze not being in that game, you had the same problem with the Knicks. You don't have two of your better rotational pieces as well. But that's not even the problem or anything with me on this Knicks team. It's just the way that they played these games. It's a way that doesn't matter who was on the court. They were going to win that game by at least double digits. It might not have been 20, 30 points, but at least double digits because Karl Anthony Towns looks he looks like he should be in an MVP conversation. Jalen Brunson's just consistent being a better point guard this season in terms of facilitating the ball. That bench just is absolutely fantastic, even without Mitch Robb Precious. Josh Hart getting triple-double over almost every game in that starting lineup. He might be moved to the bench. But then you have Deuce McBride, Cam Payne. They don't miss from behind the arc. So, this team right now, if today was day one of the playoffs, I would tell you this team, as is, could easily make a run to the finals, even against Boston. So that just tells you where this team is.
You mentioned him, but how great of an energizer has Cam Payne been? A former Knicks villain, Cam Payne now is just an absolutely electric bench guard for them. And since that, it was the Jazz loss. They've lost one game against the Mavericks. They're one loss in 5 games. So they're 4-1 since playing the Jazz, and that was a bad loss. And remember, right before the Jazz, they had a little win streak as well when they beat the Suns. But let's go right back to that Jazz game. They look great since then. The Hornets game was that weird, just terrible win. But you're glad to get away with it. There's going to be 7, 8, 9 of those wins for every good team in the league throughout the year where you should have blown the doors off that team. You didn't. They lost the game to the Mavericks, but they killed the Nuggets in Denver, which was very encouraging. But the Pelicans Magic games, easily their best consecutive wins of the year. Pelicans stink. They're a game they should blow them out. They do. And then the Magic, just the way they handled them, as we both said, was great. But now you get Mitch back. And how about the fact that they're getting quality minutes from Jericho Sims now, and you still don't feel great about him? I think he's a total liability offensively. I'll say that. Even while praising his improvement over these first 3-4 weeks. Defensively, he's been good. He's been better with rebounding. He just looked so lost the first couple of weeks and the first couple of years of his career. But getting Mitch Robb back, getting Precious Achiuwa back gives Thibs so much flexibility on the bench with those big men now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a video that I put up today. It was a question that I posed, and I guess I'll get your opinion on this too. I mean, do you even start Mitch Robb when he comes back? Because right now, this starting lineup, as is the best offensive starting lineup in the league, but it is also the worst defensive starting lineup in the league. So how would you approach that if you're Tibbs? You have Mitch Robb coming back. I assume Precious, he's coming off the bench, so we don't even have to ask the question about him. But is Mitch Robb going to actually start? And do you think that maybe, I don't know, disrupts some chemistry?
Yeah, I think that you have to start him on the bench to get especially just ease him in first, right? Yeah. You got to ease him back into play. But when he's fully healthy, I think you have to put him on the bench because the mismatch that Towns has at the 5 offensively is too great of an advantage. You also have Bridges starting to come around a little bit here. So with that and with Towns, I think Brunson will always be a good offensive producer. It doesn't matter if Robinson or Towns are on the floor. But you also will know pretty early into games if you need Mitchell Robinson on the court. If Towns is getting picked apart and OG is getting picked apart down low under the basket because they obviously create mismatches for the other team the other way, OG because he lacks size in a lot of scenarios, but he's a great defender. You know pretty early on if you need Mitchell Robinson in these games. And we've seen it with Sims to a certain extent where Thibodeau will go to him early. I think that now with Robinson, who is a true NBA stud rim protector, you'll see him go even earlier and for longer once Robinson's actually healthy and eased in. But it's a good question because either starting lineup looks exciting for a Knicks fan.
Yeah, I mean, you can't complain, right? I mean, if you're going up against a team like, I don't know, the Denver Nuggets, or you're going up against, let's just say the 76ers make a big resurgence here, and you're going to need a guy like Mitch Robb who can actually defend those guys and do it at a decent to high enough level to where they're not going to have a huge 40-point game. Maybe they'll drop, 30, but it will be pretty inefficient. That's what you need at times. I think the best answer here is, first off, Tibbs is going to figure it out. But secondly, if I had to make an option, it would be Mitch Robb coming off the bench, and then throughout the game, he'll be in. Now, that whole, do you have Cat and Mitch Robb on the court at the same time? I don't think you should have that a lot. And it's a discussion we had a couple weeks ago when we compared it to the Gobert situation. It just does Cat a disservice if you have both of them on the court, but you need to have that at some times.
And also, has there been a more dynamic offensive duo than Brunson and Cat on the pick and roll? The pick and roll game that Towns has brought, that Brunson was always able to play, but when you're playing it with guys like Hartenstein, who I love, it is just a totally different level of productivity. Now, Brunson has a shooter at every spot on the wing, Josh Hart being the only guy that's questionable in that aspect, but still, you trust him with the open 3 enough to pass it to him, and enough for the defense to respect him. But Cat and Brunson on the pick and roll has just been lethal. It's like unstoppable some nights.
Yeah, I mean, when the Wizards played the Knicks a couple nights ago, Corey Kispert was asked after the game about Brunson specifically, and he said, when Brunson has a pick and roll with a shooter, it is one of the most dangerous things in the entire NBA because of the fact that you have no idea what is going to happen at all. And that's always been the biggest thing with this team. If Hartenstein was at the top of the key, you knew he was rolling. He wasn't going anywhere else. He was either rolling or screening somebody else off ball. But now you have Cat. He could roll. He could screen for somebody else. He could pop out to half court and hit the 3-point shot. I mean, it is so dynamic right now with this team. And you could do that with 3-4 guys even on this team. I mean, there's a situation to where even you could have, I saw it, you had Josh Hart screening for Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, that's how dynamic this team is at times. And I know it's crazy to even think, but that's what the ability of this roster has.
Yeah, it's been – last year I got frustrated a lot with, in the postseason, the Hartenstein pick and roll because you knew he was never going to pop. And there were times where, if you watch any Thibs team throughout his entire tenure as a head coach in the NBA, he loves the pick and roll offense. That's his biggest thing. Derrick Rose was a huge proprietor of the pick and roll when he won his MVP. You saw it in Minnesota when Thibs was there with Towns, but when you actually can do it with a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, who has the ability to pop, drive, do whatever he wants off the roll, post up off the pick.
He's been passing spectacularly.
Well, how about the pass he throws to Bridges the other night? How do you not knock that shot down?
Yeah, you gotta hit that shot. I mean, that's just Bridges not being great still, but
your big man turns into Magic Johnson at the top of the arc, and you can't knock down the open three.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. God didn't want that to happen, I guess.
No. Well, all is good in Knicks land. Not all is well in Lakers land. What is going on with them?
No, the Lakers, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I should be livid at this point with the Lakers. I mean, they look lifeless on the court. It is embarrassing. Against the Miami Heat, they just were standing around, walking around, doing absolutely nothing on the floor, and they were late on every switch. Miami was getting wide open shots left and right. And this is a Miami team that has not been good at all this year. And you're going in there thinking, okay, maybe this is a get-right game. And they look lifeless because they're getting blown out of the doors in the first couple minutes of the game. I mean, that's on leadership. That's on coaching. That's on Anthony Davis, LeBron James. How are you not getting your team up and ready to play? You guys haven't been good this year. They're a barely above 500 team. You have to win these games. And they're sitting there and they look like they couldn't give a rat's ass less. It's honestly embarrassing to watch that team right now. And you can't defend what they're doing because it literally is a lack of effort. And when that's a problem, you got to start pointing the finger somewhere.
I think we both were impressed early with the offensive sets that Redick was running, the changes that Redick was making, but now he's battling for the first time actual adversity in the locker room, in the team's mentality, that off-court stuff. Maybe practices need to be better. I don't know what it is. We're not in the room with the Lakers, of course, but Redick, who has no coaching experience, now has to try and figure out a way to get these guys going. And sometimes, Gabe, I think it's tougher to do it, and I'm not saying this about LeBron or Anthony Davis, but I think it's tougher sometimes to do it with a group that has won championships because the urgency to win may be less than a team like the Knicks, who have never won. I mean, we're just talking about the Knicks, but none of these guys have won. They know they're good enough to win. The Celtics last year definitely had this urgency to make sure that they won. You see it often with Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat, but I'm not saying that's the case with the Lakers, but it's not like LeBron doesn't have to push a panic button on this because his career is already the greatest statistical and overall accolades collection of all time. So I don't know. I think sometimes that might get tough, but man, like I just come back to I don't like the roster that much because now you're putting Dalton Connect in positions where he has to play big, meaningful minutes. And we both like him. We both love Connect. We think he's going to be a great player and what the Lakers needed. But if you're not getting the scoring production from D'Angelo Russell because he's not knocking down his shots, that hurts your team in winning because you're getting him open looks and he's just not capitalizing. There's a lot going wrong for them right now, and you almost think that if it's not going to come from Russell, you got to look externally for an addition to start coming in and knock some shots down.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things as well. You look at who's knocking down shots or who isn't. I mean, Anthony Davis last 2 games has been putrid. I mean, this is a guy that in the beginning of the year, we were talking MVP with Anthony Davis. And while, I mean, he still has time to turn things around for sure. In the last 2 games, 3 for 14, 4 for 14. You're Anthony Davis. At this point for the Lakers, and we've been saying it for a couple years now, LeBron can't be your best player on the team. He just cannot be. And if he's sitting there last night dropping 29 points, you think that should be a win every single time. But it's not because Anthony Davis is sitting there, and I don't really know the reason, but he's just missing shots that he always used to make. And you're sitting there and you're telling yourself, well, I mean, if that, my number one, really number one, is Anthony Davis and he's not doing well, then we have no shot to win. So that's a big problem as well in Lakerland, to where you have a number one option in Anthony Davis, where at the end of the day, he can't create his own shots. I mean, he needs to be fed shots. And if you don't get it to him or he's struggling, well, good luck. You're not winning that game. That's a big problem.
Yeah, there's also a ceiling on the role players, I think, with the Lakers. They don't have that third guy. Austin Reeves would be the closest to it, but they don't have that third guy who can pop for 30 plus every couple nights. It's just not on their roster. Rui isn't that guy.
Fours,
not yet.
Yeah.
And then you're looking off the bench. Like you need those spark guys too that give you a good 7 to 9 points a game. And they're looking for that from Cam Reddish. They're looking for that from Max Christie. I mean, these guys are the guys that you need based on their minutes and what you've invested into your roster. Now you're in a position where you need those guys to do that and be that 7 to 9 point per game scorer. And we know that they're not.
Yeah. You look at this Lakers team, and a lot of people are looking at, the Lakers need to trade for Jonas Valanciunas. They need to trade for this guy, that guy. At the end of the day, they need to trade, if they're going to trade for, a Jonas Valanciunas type guy, a big center, because everyone still needs to know that there needs to be a center next to AD's power forward kind of deal. They still have that mentality. But at the same time, I think more importantly, as you've mentioned, if D'Angelo Russell and Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, if they're not hitting their shots, you need to trade for a guy that will hit a shot in the corner or will hit a 3-point shot whenever you need. Because at the end of the day, you can't afford to have this big slump that the Lakers are having from behind the arc. I mean, right now, the Lakers, they want to shoot threes. JJ Redick is their coach. You know they want to shoot threes, but you look at their 3-point numbers, and they're in a lower third of the league. So that just tells you exactly that tells you exactly the problem with that offense.
The trade market, too, when you look around, the guys that you realistically would want to get a few weeks before the deadline would be like a Peyton Pritchard, but the Celtics aren't getting rid of him. So you want to find a guy like that who can just give you 8-9 points a night off the bench. They're not going to find that. I don't see it around the league. I'm trying to look around the league and find players who legitimately could be traded, because the Lakers financially can't go get a Brandon Ingram. You know, that can't happen here. So who is that bench guy that you can find on a struggling team? That's the question that Rob Pelinka is going to have to answer. They need it. You look at the bench is awful, but I agree with your main point that LeBron can't be the best player on your team. Anthony Davis has to be the best player on your team, and then they need to find a third guy that's better than Austin Reeves, doesn't have to be as good as LeBron, but better than Austin Reeves to start supplementing some of the scoring, because it was supposed to be D'Angelo Russell, and it hasn't even been close.
Let me ask you this question, because LeBron this year is on this big tirade that he's going to play 82 games. You look at his past couple of games outside of this 29-point game. He had a 25-point game with 14 assists a couple nights ago. But look around those games, 10 points, 13 points. I'm the biggest LeBron guy you're going to find. But Kevin, do you really think it's realistic, or he should actually be playing 82 games for the betterment of himself and his fitness and his effectiveness? I don't think he should.
I don't think he should. And in terms of legacy, I don't think that 82 games this year would really do much for him, because the thing with Jordan's 82 games as a Wizard, Jordan played 82 games every year. So that was something that worked for him, and that was the era of basketball with guys playing 82 games a year. So LeBron is never going to be remembered as the guy who played every night. He load managed in the second half of his career, and he was the best player in the league, and he load managed to an extent. I don't think as much. I think we both know it's not as much as everyone made it out to be, but he load managed. And so does Jokic, so does Curry, so does Durant. It's just the NBA. So I don't think that playing 82 games is a big enough legacy accomplishment for him to really focus on it. But I can understand the personal desire. Like I was listening to Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee, and he said, you know, they asked him about would the Jets bench him? And he said, well, I really want to play 17 games. That's a big thing for me. And coming off the injury, we get why he wants to do it at 40, now 41. But for LeBron, it's kind of the same thing. If I could say to myself that I kept my body in such great shape to play 82 games as, what is he, 38, 39, then that's a pretty good personal accomplishment. I mean, that's the year 20, what are we, 21, 22 now? So that's cool. But if it's going to take a toll on his performance and on the team's performance, I'd probably start taking a night off here and there.
Now, on the flip side, let me say this. Do the Lakers even have a chance to win a game if LeBron James isn't playing and he's healthy?
No, they probably don't. So you're right, because you even just having his presence out there for 10, 12 points and 30 minutes is more than having to go to one of those guys, Christie, Reddish, Vincent, for extra minutes. I mean, those three players stink. Those are three. I mean, Gabe Vincent could not have been more disappointing for the Lakers. We spoke about this. I get that the Heat guys, those role players, don't leave and stay as good.
Mm-hmm.
But he's horrible.
Yeah, no, he's not good at all. You look at Kendrick Nunn, another Lakers mistake. You look at Gabe Vincent, a Lakers mistake. Do you want to throw Dion Waiters? Because he was also on the Lakers as well. He stinks. I mean, who else? I just throw out these names, these guys on the Miami Heat. I mean, Hassan Whiteside wasn't good outside the Miami Heat. I don't even, so what's the point of getting these guys? The Martin brother, he's not good. I don't even know where he's playing anymore. That's how irrelevant it is. I think it's Philly, but that's my point.
He is.
All these guys, they leave that team and they do absolutely nothing. I mean, Jay Crowder, do you know where he is? No.
Is he even in the league anymore?
He's in the league. He's in the league. He played against
Milwaukee. No, didn't Milwaukee just drop him?
I don't recall. I remember him and Julius Randle just got into it a couple nights ago.
Sacramento Kings, power forward.
There you go. Yeah. So that tells you all you need to know about that. All of these guys who are on that Miami Heat team are either not in the league anymore or they're in the league and they're just not good. So why do people keep picking up these guys? Gabe Vincent, another one of them, just absolutely awful outside of that Miami Heat uniform.
Yeah, Gabe Vincent's terrible. I mean, I was watching the Laker game the other night, and I keep that in mind now when I'm watching, and he's just like not good at all.
There's a big subsection of Lakers fans that actually don't like Rui Hachimura at all. And
I'm a big Rui guy.
So am I. But a lot of people, I saw this one guy on Instagram, and he's picking apart Rui's defense. And I mean, some of the times, when you actually look at it a little harder, he does not know a lot about switches and all this other stuff. Rui looks lost right now in this Lakers defense, and a lot of fans are starting to turn their head around on the fact that maybe he could be a guy that they trade at the deadline to maybe get somebody else, or if the contracts fit. I still like Rui a lot, but that's a conversation a lot of people are starting to have here.
Well, he's the type of guy that I think a veteran, established coach who knows winning, not even winning a title, but just like a Billy Donovan, a Thibodeau, one of those guys that have just been around the block. That's the type of guy that they look at and they say, all right, we can afford the contract. JJ Redick's never coached basketball before. We'll take our chances that we could get him right on defense, and he could be an impact sixth man, seventh man for us. So Rui, I'll take your word for it there that he's struggling defensively, but he's the type of guy that I think you have to maybe not look totally at JJ Redick and point the finger. I mean, some of that's going to be on Hachimura for not knowing certain switches and how to play certain positioning on defense. This is probably like his 20th year of his life playing basketball. So he should know that, but coaching's got to get to that as well and get him going. But that has kind of been a symptom of the Lakers when you watch them, is it feels like there's a lot of instances where they just could be doing the little things better, the intangibles better. And when you have the greatest player of all time and now JJ Redick, like, someone's got to be able to figure this out. And if Redick can't, that's a huge problem because, obviously he's their head coach.
Yep, 100%.
Do the Lakers? What does their coaching staff look like? Do they have former head coaches on it?
Yep, they do. They have the former coach of the Hawks, Nate McMillan. Oh yeah,
Nate McMillan.
They have another former coach. Is it Scott Brooks?
Scott Brooks.
Yeah, so they have those two who are really his main two assistants, and then everybody else is kind of normal. Yeah,
I was gonna say obviously Redick doesn't get that job without having a former head coach that he could put on his staff. Someone's got to be. Their coaching staff has to have someone on it that is able to fix these things, which is why it's odd that.
Look at
They're
those
not.
coaches, though. Like Scott Brooks, I mean, he's not a coach that is good anymore.
No.
Nate McMillan was never a good coach. The only reason why he has a job is because of his father, and that's just true. Since we want to talk about nepotism in the NBA, I mean, that's the only reason he has a job.
Yeah.
Scott Brooks was a good coach in 2012 when he had a really good OKC team. Ever since then, he's been a garbage coach. So, I mean, it's not like they put him around good coaches. They have experience, these guys, for sure, but they're not good. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems awful.
Well, that's like Steve Nash when he got hired. His assistant was Mike D'Antoni, and you kind of think D'Antoni better coach than those two guys for sure.
Yeah,
but D'Antoni never had great defensive teams. He didn't run an offense oriented to any inside scoring. He really was part of reinventing the way that offense is played with three-point shooting and analytics on three-point shooting. But yeah, I mean, you really need to try to find a good veteran coaching voice when these former players get the jobs for the first time. And when you don't, I mean, tough. Lakers look rough right now, and I feel like a large portion of this has to be allocated to the coaching staff. Anything else on the Lakers?
No, I'm just looking at Mike D'Antoni's career stats. He coached that 7 seconds or less team, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that familiarity with Steve Nash was the only reason why he really got the hire.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Okay, let's move on.
And he had the familiarity with Harden too, which apparently played a big role in getting him there.
The Rockets, right?
Yeah.
Nice, D'Antoni, man. Woo!
Former Knicks coach as well, of course.
Yeah, how'd that go?
All right, Bucks are. Speaking of coaching,
there you go.
Bucks. Talk about a well-coached team. Bucks are here, man. Bucks have arrived, and they're making us forget about that awful start. But I think we mentioned it on this. Doc Rivers had that quote while they were struggling where he said, "I'm not worried about the playoffs. We're going to be in the playoffs." And we both agreed when they were 6 games under 500 or whatever it was. We both agreed they're going to find their way to the playoffs. And they're the 5 seed right now. They've been maybe the best team in the league over the last 2 weeks. They're playing really well. Things are starting to click a little bit. Still don't love the roster. I'll still stick to my roster argument. When you have Bobby Portis playing big minutes in the East, you're going to struggle with the top few teams on the East. But Bucks are back. They're rolling, and you got to feel good if you are a fan of Milwaukee.
Yeah, you have to feel really good. This is a Bucks team to where you knew that this Bucks team needed to compete this year, or I think this year was honestly the most important. Fine, they dropped the game yesterday to the Atlanta Hawks, but the Atlanta Hawks might be the actual hottest team in the Eastern Conference right now. But I mean, you look here outside of that Hawks game. I mean, have they really played anybody good? Like that's where I'm at. Fine, you got to win these games, and we kind of talked about it with the Knicks, but who have these guys played? The Pistons, they destroyed the Pistons. The Wizards, nice. Miami Heat suck. The Hornets suck.
Yep.
The Pacers have been on a big losing streak. They suck. The Bulls suck. So congrats. You're on this big win streak. Everyone's happy that they're back or whatever. But I mean, it's not like they're really doing anything. I'm not really impressed yet. They have to get tested. They have to win. I mean, losing to the Hawks is big, but tomorrow they have a big game against Boston. They're probably not going to win it, but that's okay. But you have to show in that game against Boston that, okay, now we actually are back, like the Knicks did against Orlando. You have to make a statement game against these big top teams. It doesn't mean you really have to win, but you need to show that this is for real. Right now, the Bucks, I still see them as fraudulent. I don't think they're all that good at all, but a lot of people are starting to get on momentum, and I'm just saying pump the brakes because they haven't been tested at all yet.
Yeah, tomorrow night at Boston is easily the hardest place to win in the NBA right now. They are unstoppable at home, and I mean, I think they've only lost like 2 or 3 home games since last March or something. So they've been ridiculous at home. The Bucks, though, once again, look at the group of players. No one in the world is going to debate that Giannis is, worse than anyone in the league right now. He's probably the best player in the NBA. Sure. But no one's going to sit here and say anyone's actually better than him. Maybe a few guys you put on the level, fine. Giannis is we talk about empty stats a lot. This is a full 32 points a game, 11 rebounds, and he has been their saving grace this year and, of course, over the last decade. Dame, 25 points a game. I still don't think he is the impact player he was in Portland, but he looks good.
Yeah.
After that, Brook Lopez is their best player, and Bobby Portis is their next leading scorer. That's not a team that can win a round in the playoffs.
No. Nope. Not at all. I mean, let's look at what I think this is the big overarching conversation. If they don't win, right? If the Bucks don't win in the next couple of seasons, I don't care about what loyalty Giannis has to the Bucks. I'm asking out. I'm so serious. He signed last year, he signed a 3-year contract. So if they don't win this year, they don't win next year, then guess what? He's in a situation where he could easily ask out, and then that's it. And I think if I'm Giannis, you have to put that pressure onto the management, onto the front office, and say, guys, I want to be here for the rest of my career, but I also want to win more than one championship in my career as well. I can't afford to sit here and waste years. 32-11 he's dropping, and his team is barely over 500. That's ridiculous. You need a better team around him. You need to set that message if you're Giannis, because if this front office doesn't get it by now, they'll never understand.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Giannis has done enough for Milwaukee. And listen, you look around the landscape of the NBA, guys leave that are as good, that are MVP candidates. Guys leave teams that they never won anything with.
Yeah.
And younger. Giannis has been here through bad years, great years, and now very average years after the championship. But he's given more than enough to the city of Milwaukee and to the franchise to ask out. I thought Dame was one of the rare guys that did not win a championship, that overstayed his welcome and was, gave everything he could to the city he played in. Portland was awful. They still are, but Giannis is not in that situation. He's not in a situation that Durant was in leaving the Thunder. He's not in a situation that Harden was in leaving the Rockets. He's not in a situation of a lot of these guys. Giannis can ask out, and there really shouldn't be too many issues with that if he does. Let's move on here from the Bucks, who we are still going to label as frauds for the time being. How about the Mavericks without Luka? They look good without Luka. They win a lot of games without him. But obviously he's the best player on the team. Where do you stand on those kind of arguments about ball movement with Dallas? And Kyrie's looked great. I think Kyrie's looked as good as he has in a long time with Dallas here this year. But where do you stand on the debate of Luka being in, out, and the Mavericks as a whole?
I think that it's very interesting. So when the Knicks played the Mavericks, obviously Luka was not in that game. On the broadcast, they said when Luka is not on the floor, they play real basketball. That was the conversation. And you look over the past, 9 games here, and you just look at Kyrie's number over those last 9 games. I mean, he's upped it to the next level. He's looked like the real player that you expected from Kyrie, dropping 30 a couple of times. And that's the kind of guy you need on this team. You need the ball movement to be moving around. And when you have Luka in there, you don't get that. Now, am I going to sit here and say that the Mavericks are better without Luka? Of course not. But the style of basketball they play without Luka is conducive to winning, because they're spreading the ball around. Kyrie's that main star, but he's getting the ball around as well. You see a lot more people getting involved. That's winning basketball. That's the winning basketball that I like to see personally. And when you have Luka on the floor, they still might win games, but I mean, it's just ISO. It's not like a pretty style of game. You know what I'm saying? So that's the difference. And I think it's a great problem to have if you're the Mavericks.
And of course, I think that you would agree, but I'll confirm with you. Playoff games, must-win games. There's no one out in Dallas that doesn't want Luka on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, you need him.
Need him to play in those games, of course. But you're right. I thought last year in the postseason, in the conference final, and also in the conference semifinals, and then also in the finals, which they would have never won no matter what. But in those last 3 rounds of the playoffs for Dallas, I wanted to see Luka play a lot more post basketball. and let Kyrie run the floor. But I think with Luka as the best backcourt, I mean, is he the best backcourt player in the NBA?
Sure. For sake of
Either
argument,
way, whether he is or if he's second or third, he's
Yeah.
such a sensational backcourt talent that he needs the ball in his hands beyond the arc. And that's what he's going to command as a franchise player and face of your franchise. I would have loved to see him sacrifice and play a little bit more post basketball. I thought he had great mismatches down low. I think it opens up the rest of the floor for his teammates. And he and Kyrie are a little bit of an awkward duo. They're great. It's worked out. First year they're together. They go to the finals. So I'm not really questioning any of that. But with Kyrie, with Luka, with Clay, when they're all on the court, it's a little bit of an awkward set of skills being paired together. And in order to combat that, Kyrie is the guy I want as the dominant ball handler.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, let's shout somebody else out as well. Quentin Grimes. I mean, coming up,
great.
He's been great over there. You look at his last 8 games played, he's shot the ball 48% from behind the arc, including a couple games where he dropped 24, 28 points in a game against the Portland Trailblazers. I mean, that's the guy that they were missing last year in the playoffs and the finals, because last year, who was sitting in the corner trying to hit threes? It was PJ Washington. Now you have Quentin Grimes. Obviously, you added Clay as well to facilitate some of that shooting. But I think this Mavericks team now is much more complete than they ever were. I think they still have some deficiencies down low, but you're getting some really good shooting. You're getting some really good pairing at top. You look at that combo that you were talking about, though. It's weird because you saw it a little bit different. A lot of people want to compare it to the LeBron and Kyrie combo, right? And in Cleveland. But the thing is, LeBron was much more athletic, much more explosive. So the ball movement and the fluidity in the offense was there. Now with Luka, he doesn't move as fast. He's not as fluid. He's not as athletic. So the ball doesn't move as fast. So that's the biggest difference in this duo versus the LeBron duo. And that's what makes a lot of difference in these games, because at the end of it, you're not going to have LeBron cutting off ball. You're not going to have Luka doing any of these things, because he just doesn't have those capabilities, and he's forced to stay in the perimeter late in games. And sometimes it works when he hits those shots. And we'll all say we want him on the floor for those moments, right? We already agreed. But sometimes you need a little different spice. And I'm glad that the Mavericks have shown that if they need to get to that bag, at least they have the capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. That's a good point. I think with Luka too, like the comparison to LeBron, I've seen that. That's ridiculous, man. We always talk about it. LeBron might be the greatest passer to ever play the game. He is such a great passer. And there are times where LeBron, I mean, his instincts are so much quicker, first of all. His instincts than any offensive player we've ever watched. Quicker instincts all around. But Luka gets the ball. It's the square up with your defender. Let's try some ISO from the wing. And LeBron also had an understanding with Kyrie that I don't think they have in Dallas, that Kyrie's the point guard. Kyrie runs the floor. He runs the offense. And LeBron, of course, brought the ball up often, but not as often as Kyrie. It was at least a 2/3 portion for Kyrie share on being the primary ball handler up the floor. But there was an understanding of roles. Sometimes in Dallas, there's not an understanding of roles when I'm watching, but sometimes, a lot of the time, they still win when there seems to be that misunderstanding. It's just not typical basketball. It's not what we're used to. It's exactly what you said. We love to see the style of basketball they're playing, because that is the more normal, usual way teams win, with good ball movement. But yeah, Dallas a better team than they were last year, though. All of this criticism I'm giving him, Dallas a better team than they were last year when they lost the finals. Grimes, Thompson, you nailed it. Those additions are going to pay great dividends the whole year for them. They already have when the guys are on the floor. But Grimes is going to start coming along here. Only 8 points per game so far this year on average. But if you're just box score watching, you'll think he's one of their average bench players, and he comes in for a couple minutes a game. Grimes is going to become a big contributor and maybe one of the league's best 6-man.
Yeah, I mean, he already is in that conversation based off of the last couple of weeks of play. I think that Quentin Grimes, he has the role on that team that he kind of was wanting on the Knicks, and they never got it to him.
Yep.
Now he has that, and I'm very glad. You always have to be glad these former Knicks guys, right, doing well. Other
Yeah.
teams, you look at R.J. Barrett had 37 a couple nights ago. All these guys, you have to be happy for them. And Quentin Grimes, one of those guys.
Absolutely. All right. Well, the Mavs are a good team to segue into this because they don't have a big man. And I'm just curious with you, Gabe. You look at the resurgence of some of these bigs and the position, especially offensively, these stretch bigs are so crucial to great offenses. You saw the Celtics prioritize Porzingis. I know it hasn't really worked out with him on the floor, but we know that they play their best basketball when he's available. We've seen Wemby taking over the league, Karl Anthony Towns with the Knicks, the assets they gave up to get him, and the Timberwolves struggling without it. We see Jokic, obviously, take the league by storm, multiple MVPs, Joel Embiid, an MVP. But all these guys are great. When you look at the teams that are winning, they don't typically have, and I'm talking winning championships.
Yeah.
Is having a big man an essential aspect, a big man who's really good, a superstar big man, the guys that I named? Is having a big man like that essential to winning in the NBA, or is this league for guards?
This league is a wing and guard dominant league, and it's been that way for most of the 2012s to now the 2024s, to where, as you mentioned, the guards are starting to, become more and more important. Let's look at these champions. I mean, let's look at once the Golden State Warriors got going, right? 2015. They never had a big center. It was Zaza Pachulia, Kevon Looney. Like, these guys aren't top tier centers. You look at other teams on those kind of winning teams. I mean, LeBron, yes, the Lakers had a nice big man. The Bucks had a really good big man. We'll count Giannis, right? But then you look at I don't count anything. I don't count like Al Horford. Kristaps Porzingis doesn't play enough for me to really count him for the Boston Celtics team. So I really think you need dominant wings and guards. I think, though, it's still very much a wing league and now transitioning to much more of a guard league, but because guards are getting taller, right? I think that's the reason, because you cannot have a big man be traditional anymore. You don't have the guy to where you just throw it down low and he's going to score 2 points. You want to know why you can't have that? Because on the other team, they'll go and they'll shoot a 3 and then you're already losing the game.
Yep.
So that's where this league is. I thought we were kind of making a comeback with the whole Embiid thing and Jokic, to where you kind of were getting to that point where you needed it. But it just made me realize that it's not the center position that's actually what's needed. It's a guy that can run an offense, be big and be dominant, and hit a 3 as well. So I don't think it's all that essential to have a big man. You can win in this league without a big man. You can't win in this league without a good wing or guard.
I pulled up last night when I was thinking about this topic, the Ringer Top 100 Players they do every year, and I think they do a terrific job with it. If you haven't seen it, definitely worth checking out. Good breakdowns on every player. But top 15 players in the league. Number 16 on the Ringer's Top 100 is Wemby.
Okay.
In the top 15, only 3 of them are bigs. It's Jokic, Davis, and Embiid. I'm not counting Giannis. Giannis is a wing.
Okay.
And you look at the guys that are listed, they're all guys you'd rather have than the premier bigs, because in that top tier, it is Luka, Giannis, Tatum, SGA, Curry, Durant, Ant, LeBron, Jalen Brunson, Jaylen Brown, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell. These are all guys you'd rather have. And then you get into the later stages, and it's almost, it's really justifiable to say that the best guys in the league, besides those top 4 of Wemby, Jokic, Embiid, and Wemby, Jokic, Embiid, Anthony Davis, are like not tier 1 players, because you get then to Karl Anthony Towns, who's 28, and everyone behind him, then the bigs start to fall in line a little bit. Chet, Siakam, if you want to count him, Markkanen, if you want to count him. But I'm glad you brought up the point about the 3 versus the 2, because it's not the center position at all that is coming back. It is the centers are catering to the skill sets of the guards and wings so that they can be functional in today's offense.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the guy's 6'11", 7 feet, he can't not have a three anymore.
Yeah.
If you want to be a premier player, you have to shoot the three. Giannis is such a rare exception, but even he can knock it down if you need him to. So you're right. It is a league for guards and wings. I think statistically, people think we might be having a revival of bigs, but they're not playing the low post. They're shooting threes. They're shooting middies. There's not a Tim Duncan style of play in the league. And Jokic is basically the Nuggets point guard. So, I mean, do you even want to count him as a real center here? But good little thinking point about how the game's changed.
And I think a lot of people, Kevin, the reason why they're saying, oh, it's a big man's resurgence is because look at MVPs. Everyone's talking about Jokic winning 3. Giannis, because people will count him, say he was up there winning them, and Embiid up there in the conversation. And we were sitting here saying, wait, why aren't wings winning anymore? Why aren't these guards winning anymore? And as you mentioned, it's not because there's a center resurgence. It's because, as you said, they're just catering to how the game needs to be played, and just so happens that they're 7 foot. They could score inside easily as well.
Look at the last few champions. You mentioned them, but we'll really go down the list here. Celtics did not have a big or need a big in order to win. Porzingis didn't play enough games in the postseason.
And they won by wings.
They won with wings, exactly, and great defensive guards. Yeah. Nuggets, Jokic, sure, but he's such an anomaly. I don't even want to count him in a resurgence of bigs around the league. He is just too different of a player. Yeah. I don't even know how to describe him. Warriors in 22, of course, the Warriors in 18, 17, and 15, no big that really stands out to you. Draymond was a great enforcer down low, but not really a big man, more of a wing size as a player. Raptors, good bigs, but
they had good,
guys you could find around the league.
Marc Gasol was their center. Nice.
Gasol and Ibaka was in there. Like, it was good players who are very expendable.
Yeah.
And then it really takes until you get back to the Spurs with Duncan. Yeah, and let's be honest, in 14, Tim Duncan was not Tim Duncan. He was the third or fourth best player on that team, which was a great team. But then you have to go back to Dallas, where it's Dirk. And Dirk was one of the early guys who catered to the skill set and the jump shot of wings and really started to change that. So that's one team, 2 teams in the last 15 years of champions that we feel good about. And then you see where it used to exist, where you had the good low post guys with the Lakers, with Pau Gasol, with the Celtics, with Garnett, and then the Spurs, of course, the Heat with Shaq, all those Shaq Lakers teams. But since then, the big man has been phased out as an essential part of winning. Doesn't mean you still don't want one to play, but there's just a lot of good defensive centers around the league and a lot more great offensive wings and point guards that teams are prioritizing.
Yeah, like let's look at what a lot of Knicks fans are looking at. Like Isaiah Hartenstein, I mean, that's a guy that you can find a lot of. The Isaiah Hartenstein, Alperen Sengun, Mitchell Robinson with his defensive prowess, Robert Williams III, right? These are, I'm naming some people that people are like, oh, they're not that good. But you match them around with good wings, good guards. That's a championship level player right there just because of the role that they play. You do not need centers to be all-stars, superstars in order to win a championship. You do need centers that could be a really good placeholder on what the role is. But it's just a different league nowadays. And I think it's a more fun league, the way that the game is played. We could go on off and on about that, but I just like the way it is right now. It seems more natural in the way that before it just seemed like a cheat code, right? You throw it down low, he does a couple post-ups, there's nothing you could do, and he dunks it. Now you need actual skill, and that's what I like the most about the way that the league has shifted over the years.
The athletes are also so much better. There's so many more lengthy, defensive-oriented bigs that are 7-footers who can actually run the floor well and handle the ball in the post. So that's become the average. It used to not be the average where every team had a guy that's able to get work done in the post on both ends. You used to have teams with totally stiff 7-footers that just couldn't play much great professional basketball. Like a lot more Jericho Sims kind of guys that weren't even as athletic, but with that skill set of, he could probably score a lot in the G League, but here in the NBA, he doesn't have the skill set for it. Now is so many guys who are so well coordinated or so athletic. So not a big man's game, but always nice to have one. Let's just look around here at the quarter mark in the NBA. We have the NBA Cup going on. What have been the biggest surprises for you at the quarter mark? And, any predictions that you had that you just feel great about right now?
Well, one of my biggest predictions was that the Knicks were going to win the NBA Cup. I had that prediction from beginning of the year. I said, this is the year where the Knicks got that hungry team that they're still figuring it out. Have some of these teams where they're not taking the NBA Cup as seriously. You look at the Boston Celtics, they're not taking it as seriously because it's the beginning of the year and they're still trying to just going along. They just want to get to the playoffs. And you look at teams like the Knicks to where they're unproven and they want to put themselves to the test with this new team. They still have a lot of learning to do, and they're putting themselves in this playoff kind of mindset in order for them to figure things out on the fly. And the Knicks have really shown to be one of those teams where they can easily win this NBA Cup and nobody would be surprised. So to me, that was my biggest prediction that is seeming to come true based off of the odds and all that other stuff.
Yeah, Knicks host the Hawks next Wednesday, I think is December 11th, right? It's next Wednesday. And then in that side of the bracket, of course, Bucks and Magic. I think that we'd confidently say the Knicks are the best team of the four in their side of the bracket in the NBA Cup. So that brings up an interesting question, though, with the NBA Cup. First of all, I want to get your thoughts on it. Has it been a good innovation by the NBA?
I think it's made the beginning of the year way more exciting.
And should it be celebrated by fans, around the league if your team wins? If your team wins the NBA Cup, are you getting excited?
I'm happy for like a day or two. I'm not sitting there, doing parades, taking shots, popping the bottles. But I am happy that my team won a cup. I mean, the Lakers won for me last year, and I was happy about it. I was watching it all the whole time. I was hyped because I was like, okay, good. Your team has some promise here. But I think it's more of a good benchmark to see where your team is at versus popping bottles, having parades.
And
but I still like commemorating it. Like the team should still put up something in the rafters. I don't think it should be as important or anything as another banner, but it still should be celebrated to an extent,
And of course, the Lakers get memed for it, but the league makes you put up the NBA Cup banner if you win it, trying to promote that, and that makes sense, and it's all good, really, unless you just want to troll the team that wins it. But I think the extra money that comes into play, it's $50K per round one after the elimination round. So I think, or whatever it is, the round robin group, the group stage, that's what it is, the group stage. It's $50K per team to leave that, and then per round you win, and then it's $500K if you win the whole thing. That means a lot because there's a lot of players making the veteran minimum or the NBA minimum and trying to push over $1 million, trying to get over to that next mark. And those are guys who in their career might make $7 million if they play for a few years, which is a great number, of course, to make as a human being in America. But at the same time, you can't live 50 years on that alone. You're going to need to have some sort of income after. So they're trying to save up, get as much of a cushion as they can. And you see with a guy like Brunson, they care about getting their teammates that extra cash. And Josh Hart has been the joke of the team for saying that he just wants to spend the money. He doesn't care about the other guys. But there's an incentive here for the players. I think they care about winning it. But of course, what means more? I think it's fun to win. You don't really care if you lose it. Whereas in the postseason, it means everything for these guys to win the title. But if you get bounced out of the NBA Cup, you're not losing sleep as a player. But they enjoy winning it. They want to win it.
And let me tell you this, during the regular season games where it's an NBA Cup game, but it's regular season, they still don't feel like they extra stuff. I know some of the crowd, and you'll hear some of them talk about, it brings that extra element. When it's a regular season game, it really doesn't have that. It still feels like a normal regular season game. and maybe sometimes there's a little bit more gamesmanship with the point differential at times, right? We saw that at the end of the Knicks game last night. But to me, when you see them go to the knockout stages, right? When they're in Vegas, that's when you really see it tick it up a notch. That's when the games actually start becoming more meaningful for the players, more than just the fans. And I think that's when you see the most fun stuff. That's what I noticed last year as well with the Lakers. That's what I'm noticing this year with the Knicks, is that the normal games in the regular season, it's still a regular season game, right? The colored courts, whatever, you could do whatever you want. It's still a regular season game for the players. But once they get to Las Vegas, things start to get a little bit different. And that's what we're still waiting for. And we saw some great knockout games last year. And I think this year will be the exact same.
Yep, absolutely. I like the NBA Cup. I'm going to celebrate if my team wins, and I'm going to be excited about it for a day or two. I think it's a cool innovation. I think you're exactly right. It doesn't actually add more to a regular season game. I care equally about the regular season games with the regular court as I do for the regular season games with the colored courts and with all the antics of the NBA Cup. It means just as much, but it is a fun little thing to have in the beginning of the year for the players, for the fans, and for the entire league. Anything else today, Gabe, that you would like to touch on before we head out?
Nothing really I want to get too deep in, but I mean, you got to look at some of these teams that maybe we didn't expect to be where they are. I mean, the Atlanta Hawks right now are a team on a 5-game winning streak, and they beat the Celtics a couple weeks ago. I mean, this is a team that you didn't expect to see a lot from, but they've really shocked a lot of people, winning games against the Bucks, who are kind of surging. They won against the Cavs. They beat the Celtics before that. Like this is a team in the Atlanta Hawks to where, fine, you might not be too scared, but this is a team worth watching because they're a fun young bunch of ball players, and I think that's something that at least I need to say out for the rest of this week.
All right, we're a quarter way through the year here. MVP, Coach of the Year, who are your awards guys so far? Rookie of the Year, Depoy, who are your awards guys at this point?
MVP. Because we did Rookie of the Year last week, right? So let's do MVP. I'm going to say Jokic wins it again because it's Jokic, and they don't have any voter fatigue when it comes to the Serbian guy. So he'll win my MVP. I'll give Coach of the Year to Ime Udoka with the Rockets. We had a nice conversation about them last week. Sixth Man of the Year, Peyton Pritchard. I think he's just the runaway right now for the favorites. Pretty much chalk with that one. And then what else do I got?
Rookie of the Year?
Rookie of the Year, Dalton. Depoy, I don't have. I guess Wemby, but I
think Wemby's like the heavy odds favorite, anyways.
Yeah. So I mean, I think those are my guys.
An obscure one. Always an obscure award at this point in the year to look at. But do you have like a most improved player that you're looking at? I'll give you, if you really haven't been looking at it, which I'm sure you haven't been looking at, most improved player award. No. And I haven't been either. That's why I have the odds pulled up. Top 3 in odds right now: Dyson Daniels, Jalen Williams, Cam Thomas.
Oh, Dyson Daniels. Yes. I know he's the favorite, which make me sound stupid, but it goes with my Hawks kind of theme. Dyson Daniels.
He's been great.
Yeah, he's been fantastic.
He has maybe been the best player on Atlanta this year. If you factor in everything, I don't think anyone's been more. I'll say no one's been more important to their success. Maybe a few guys that are as important. No one's been more, though. Yeah, I'd go pretty much the same as you. Jokic MVP, Wemby, Depoy. Rookie of the Year, I think McCain would win it if the season ended today. Just stats are better, and he's got a good following publicly. Yeah. So I think he would get the award. I think Coach of the Year would be Atkinson, but you're on it with Udoka there. Toss-up for me between those two, and then Dyson Daniels most improved. Good group of players. Good start to the season. Good first quarter of the year. Next week we'll have some more NBA Cup news and action. We'll know more of what went down. We'll know who advances to the Final Four of the NBA Cup. And we'll be back at 11 o'clock on Thursday. Thanks for watching. Every week, myself and Gabe take you through it. Keep an eye out for the Burrows Friday or Monday big stuff with the Soto news and rumors. So we're going to try and put all that together, and maybe he signs over the weekend. We'll see. But we'll be back soon on the Burrows. And, of course, the Sunday recap is back this Sunday at 7:30. We also did a Burrows talking about Soto. The information is a little bit outdated already, just 48 hours later. There's so many rumors flying around, but we did our best to navigate the situation and try and walk you through how you should be navigating different reports and how everything is covered. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on Thursday. Keep an eye out for everything else BTO related.